So, welcome to this week's episode of Unbound. I'm Nicola Humber, author of Unbound and founder of the Unbound Press. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Cat Raincock. Cat is author of Born to Shine, The Modern Woman's Guide to a Happier Life. And Cat and I share a publisher. That's how we connected, but we've never actually spoken before, apart from a couple of minutes before we hit the record button. And I'm always really excited to have these conversations when I haven't actually spoken to the person before, because we just don't know what's going to come out in this conversation, which is very exciting. And Cat, well, welcome, first of all.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. And I was reading through your bio before we came on, and I think it was the first line that really grabbed me. And you talk about how motherhood was the catalyst for your life's undoing. And I just love that word, undoing. It's so similar to kind of Unbound, because when we start to kind of walk the unbound path, it can really feel, or not even just when we start to walk it, whenever we're kind of being unbound and unbinding ourselves from all of these beliefs about who and how we should be in the world, it does feel like this undoing. It can feel really scary. So I'm really excited to dive in and see and talk more about that. But I normally start with the same question, which is, is there a particular time in your life that comes to mind, or a situation where you felt particularly bound, and how did you move beyond that?
So for me, it was that sentence you picked out, and it was the moment that I gave birth to my first son. Well, my only son, but my first child 7 years ago. And we were so happy. He was a healthy boy. If I'd had a choice, it would have been a boy first. So we were absolutely made up. And he was born by emergency cesarean after a long labour that evening. And then the next morning I woke up and I had him in my arms, and I was looking down at him, and I was so filled up with love and awe. And as I looked down and felt all those feelings, I then looked up and I looked out the window, and all I felt was this incredible amount of overwhelm. And I just cried, like silent tears. And I didn't even know what really was happening or why I was doing it. I just allowed this emotion to come up. And so having a child, and I was 35, 34 years old, I was rigid with routine. I was neurotic, controlling, nervous if I was missing the bedtime or the feed. And so once I learnt about all of this, it was at that point that I was so bound by my fear of allowing and unbounding, if you want to say. Now, I'd had all of this before, but the birth was the catalytic moment of my life's undoing, and actually, the best thing that's ever happened to me, not just because it's my kids, but also the transformation that came about. So all of this did exist. So actually, for 35 years, I'd lived a very bound life, restricted by my limiting beliefs and my conditioning, not just from parents, but society. And it was that moment that I birthed not just my wonderful son, but I birthed all my emotions that had been bound in me for 35 years.
Wow. I so identify with what you're saying there. I mean, I'm not a mother, so I haven't been through that birth experience, but had a very similar kind of awakening, I guess, at that kind of age, like mid-30s, where I recognized, oh my goodness, I've been holding so much back for pretty much the whole of my life. And yeah, it does feel like this kind of undoing.
Yeah, and you know what? What's really important is, I do connect with a lot of mums who have a similar story to what mine was. But I think the important thing is, for me, the birth was the catalytic moment. That can be divorce, it can be death, it can be moving house, it can be changing the job or not getting the job. It's whatever that catalyst. So this is not about me as a mum. This is about women as a whole. That there is a point for a lot of us where something triggers us, where what we feel like is a massive falling apart, but it's actually the greatest thing that can happen to us if you can find the right support to go, actually, do you know what? You're just sick and tired of that old part. Yeah. You're sick and tired of feeling bound. And if you can lean in and go, I'm ready actually to see what I'm being shown here now, then, it's actually the greatest thing. And it's always, whoever I speak to or whoever I interview or whatever woman I see, it's always that catalytic moment that's led, and it feels so painful, but it leads to their greatest moment or transformation. But it doesn't feel like it at the time.
No, I know. Damn, why does it have to feel so painful? But can you speak a little bit, Kat, about, you talked about the limiting beliefs and the ways that you were bound, like through a big part of your life. And can you speak to any of those specifically, the kind of beliefs that you had about yourself or how you should be in the world that kind of kept you restricted in this way?
So the beliefs that I held were, I'm not enough. I don't matter. I'm insignificant. I'm not heard. It's a really common one for a lot of people. I'm not seen, which is why my book's called Born to Shine, because we are all born to shine, but we're not always seen. And so those beliefs led to behaviors like a drive for perfection. I am a recovered perfectionist, but I was, so before children, the perfection would manifest in the way I looked, that, oh God, I can't go to that if my hair's not washed, or I can't go to that if I don't have the right clothes. I'd always had long-term boyfriends, and so I'd always put on a front of, I'm in a happy relationship and this is all wonderful. And people always just thought, Cat's all right, Cat's doing good, everything's all right in Cat's life. And actually, I thought it was at the time, until I went pop. And when I could look back at what was keeping me so, the control around having to be perfect, because I thought, if I'm perfect, so as a little girl it was, if I behave myself and look pretty and stay quiet, I'll get connection from mum and dad. So rather than playing out and being the rebel, I played in. And that then goes forward until I'm an adult. And then when it was a mother, it was, I have to make gluten-free muffins, I have to make homemade food, I must be here, I must do that, I must be everything. And I think women as a whole, certainly in this modern society, are expected to be everything to everyone all the time. And it's simply not sustainable, and it is impacting our health, our mental health, our emotional self, our spiritual well-being. It really is. And that for me was where I was so driven by this desire to appear perfect and like I had it all together. And almost that was the hardest thing, when I did slowly go pop, to actually admit, like, oh, I'm not perfect and life isn't that good. And it was difficult with people in my life that I would go, like, I don't actually feel good, this isn't great where I am, and they'd be like, no, you're fine. And it's like, no. And I think that's part of it, is being heard, and people going, oh, okay, I see you, I can understand that whatever's going on for you is going on for you. So for me it was particularly perfection that I was, and overall feelings of not enough. And that's so common in so many women, and it's, you know, society doesn't help us. And now it's not to blame, because we are empowered ourselves. But I don't watch the news anymore. I choose to read high vibe books, magazines, listen to you know, a high vibrational type of music, because otherwise you end up feeding that not enoughness. And it's actually up to us to go, do you know what, I am enough. And actually recently I've been doing some kind of exercise that is quite out of my comfort zone, but I feel ready for it, and I've let go of a lot recently, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to go and do these really big exercise classes. And the first one I went to, I was really quite nervous because I'd never done it before, and they're jumping around like crazy people. And I got in there, and I just said to myself, do you know what, just being here is enough. Just showing up is enough. And every time I now go to those exercise classes and I'm a bit better and I'm a bit fitter and I'm a bit stronger, I just go, just being here is enough. And so it's an active thing that we have to do in order to change these old belief systems. Because the point is that beliefs are there to be changed. You know, as kids, we thought that Father Christmas existed and the Tooth Fairy. I mean, I still do believe in the Tooth Fairy. But, you know, Father Christmas isn't real, and we changed our belief.
Oh my God, spoiler alert.
No, I just broke it for you. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry, I'll put a warning on there. So if you've got kids, you might not want to watch this one with them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there we are. Sorry about that.
It's okay. Oh, so good, so good. And you know, you talk about that not good enough, I'm not enough belief, which I think virtually everyone has in one way or another, particularly women, because we receive all of these messages from a very early age in lots of different ways. You know, we pick up the message that we're not enough. But when you recognize that actually everybody has this, like in that exercise class you go to, like probably everyone is having the same sort of thoughts at one level, it can be very freeing in itself. It's like, okay, because it's when we feel like we're the only ones who feel that way, like there's something wrong with me and everyone else is fine, that's when it's exactly an issue, can't it?
And I think, you know, as kids we pick up these beliefs, and I say it in my book, that kids are naturally narcissistic. In order to thrive and survive, they have to make everything about themselves. So that means that if mummy and daddy aren't there, or mummy's cross, or daddy's, you know, emotionally absent, whatever, they go, oh, mummy's not here because she doesn't love me. Mummy, if I was enough, mummy would be here. If I mattered, mummy would be here. If she loved me, she would be here. And actually, until we understand that, we take that through all the way to adulthood. And that, you know, that's you know, I think it's really important that we need to understand that this programming goes back so far, and actually therapy isn't for crazies. It's, you know, I believe that everyone should have a mentor or some kind of coach to show us our blind spots, to just take us back and actually show us that, you know, sometimes for people it's trauma, sometimes for people it's just really innocuous moments or scenes or circumstances that have created these beliefs as a child, and they are childlike beliefs that we have carried forward into our relationships, into our workplace, into our friendships as adults, until we actually go, oh, this isn't as, you know, doesn't feel as good as it should be, and we can actually get to the root of that and change it.
Absolutely. I'm interested, Kat, you know, when you spoke about like having your son, like this like really momentous kind of time, and you look down at him and then you were feeling all those feelings of overwhelm as well. And just throughout that period where you were having all of these kind of mixed emotions, what was that like for you? That sounds immensely challenging, and I'm sure that lots of women watching will have experienced something similar, and not necessarily in relation to motherhood, but where something really that we've kind of wanted for so long happens, and we find that we have, you know, these feelings of overwhelm or disappointment, or, you know, we're feeling restricted in some way at the same time. What was it like for you to kind of hold all of that?
You know, it was really hard, because you literally got two sets of emotions going on. You're like, I'm so happy, this is what I've always wanted. I had the fairy tale of, you know, having a wonderful partner and having a child, and yet I feel overwhelmed, and as I got further into motherhood, underwhelmed. Now again, this was nothing to do with my child, this was to do with what was actually going on internally that had been triggered. And I think it's a really important thing to say that a lot of the time, people sort of blame the change and the birth or the job or the relationship for it not working out, and actually it was just the thing that's brought the old stuff up, that he was the thing that birthed those feelings that were really deep inside but just needed to come out. It took a lot to have to admit, and also there was a lot of shame around sort of saying I'm not okay, and this doesn't feel as good. And I remember one time sitting on the bed and I said to my husband, I was like, I don't like being a mother. I don't like what I'm feeling. Actually, it wasn't motherhood. It was these old feelings that if I hadn't have had a child, I would definitely have been on course for a nervous breakdown. However that was going to be delivered, so it got delivered through the birth. But yeah, I felt ashamed to admit that I actually didn't like what I was feeling. And which then makes it even worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm feeling this, and now I'm shaming myself for feeling this. But you know, but that's, you know, it's not a million miles from what happened in childhood. That, you know, we often, and I've been a culprit of it with my own kids, to say, you know, stop shouting, or stop having a mental tantrum. And actually, you know, I've learned from the conscious parenting books that I've read and all the support that I've had, that actually it's really important that we don't shame anyone's feelings, that we go, I understand that you feel like that, but we, you know, this is how we handle it. So yeah, I was filled with sort of shame, but then I was like, but I really love my son and he's amazing. So what do you do with that? Which, you know, you're in this whirlwind of guilt and shame and all your old stuff.
Yeah. Great. So what did you do, Kat? What was the kind of journey that you went?
My husband had embarked on some coaching to get to the next level in his work. Little did he know that, you know, that next step was to do with sort of confidence, and that was childhood. So he was sort of a few months into his coaching, and he sat me down one day and he was like, are you happy? I thought it was the weirdest question. I was like, of course I'm happy. What are you talking about? It's like, I'm not sure you are. And I was like, of course I'm happy. I'm just running around. I've got a child. I'm making homemade food and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, I think it's a bit more than that. I think that you should see a coach. And because he was already doing it, maybe I'd have been more resistant had he not. But because he was already doing it, I was like, well, yeah, I mean, if I can, being a perfectionist at that time, if I can improve myself and be even more perfect and a better wife and a better mum, I'll go and do it. And she showed me all of my childhood and why I was feeling like I was feeling, why the dynamics in my family had created the way I was feeling, and what I can do to change it. And it unlocked a massive part of me, in fact, all of me. And because I've learned so much about my subconscious mind, I'd always had an interest in it, and I literally could not stop reading about it. So it, you know, yeah, because the first 5 sessions were pretty painful. I did a lot of crying. My body would sort of shake, but it all came out, and it was the best thing I've ever done. And I'm committed to my growth now and my continued healing. I mean, I don't have like the emotional stuff that I used to in any way, but of course, as I set my goals higher, you know, there are still triggers, but there are opportunities to grow and learn. So I am a person that I love to face the stuff, because I know what greatness comes, or growth, or what more goals that I set myself. So yeah, I got a coach and I started to understand my childhood. And I told myself a really big Disney story. My coach always says, I look through rose tinted glasses, and I remember she asked me, she said, what was your childhood? I was like, yeah, it's really normal, really good. My mum and dad still together, 2 brothers. And the truth is that on paper it was. There was nothing big or traumatic, but I still had created feelings of not enough, and my needs for me weren't met. But of course, this isn't to blame my parents. They did everything they could. And on the whole, I'm here to tell my tale. But it was the greatest thing that I could do, because I could, to learn about the past so that I could actually then look to the future and embody myself as my true self, rather than the stories that I told myself or the beliefs that I'd inherited. Because I do have some people that come to me and that, they're fearful of finding out, but actually it's the most liberating thing you can do. And yeah, it's hard to face for a little while, and you cry for a bit. And I remember who I trained as a hypnotherapist with, a woman called Marissa Peer. And she always says, like, nobody died of crying. And actually crying is the most healing waters on the planet.
Absolutely.
But we, again, as women, we shut that down, and we're always apologizing for it. Don't apologize. Let it out. Because as soon as you do, you feel so much better.
Oh, absolutely. Such a great release, and as you said, so healing to allow those tears to come. If I'm working with a client, and like you, I'm trained as a hypnotherapist, and particularly like in hypnotherapy sessions, if a client started to cry, it'd be like,
you're like, yes, I know. But sometimes I get them in the therapy room and they start to cry like within the first 5 minutes, because I've touched on something really, but they were ready. They're like, they literally come ready, and they go, I'm really sorry, I'm crying. I'm thinking, or I always say, like, no, this is the place to do it. This is, so even in that safe environment, we are still apologizing for feeling our feelings, and that's part of the problem.
Absolutely.
We need to be feeling our feelings to stop the disease, to stop keeping stuff inside, because actually we've got to get it out.
Absolutely, so true. So how did you come to write your book, Cat? Because I'm, as a writer myself, and obviously work with a lot of women writers, I'm always really interested to hear people's stories of how they actually came to write their book. So what was it like?
So I never imagined that I would ever write a book. I actually hated reading as a child, and I know. I didn't think I was particularly good at English. So it was never on my radar. It's not like I dreamt about it. After I went through my personal transformation, I came out the other side, sort of 6 months, and I just thought, why? The question I kept saying is, why does every woman not know this? That all the things that I'd learned about the universe, the law, I knew about the law of attraction, but when I really got into the metaphysics side of things, when I really got into why inner child work is so important, and why our early childhood conditioning is so important to understand, I was like, we all need to know this, and I want every woman to know that there is an opportunity for real growth, and really you can change the way you think and live. So so I'd already trained as a hypnotherapist, and I was really loving working with all my clients. And one day so I was able to do what I was doing, and showing women that there was another way. And I pulled a tarot card one day, and it said, you must write. And I looked and I was like, oh, that's just ridiculous. I mean, and obviously sometimes with tarot cards you're like, oh yes, I really believe that, and other times you're like, oh no, not that one.
I don't want that one. Shuffle the deck again.
Yeah, so I was like, it was one of those, oh, I don't want that one. But I put it by my bedside table, and I kept looking at it, and I was like, oh well, maybe I could. Well, I'll just keep it there, and I'll think about it. And a few weeks later, and I know about algorithms, but this was weird. I got a Instagram thing that was like, you must write from your soul. And I was like, oh, well, that's weird. And then the next time was, I saw the Hay House Writers Workshop, and I was like, oh, that's like the third thing in about 3 weeks. So I was like, this is really interesting. And I looked up the dates of it, and my diary was completely clear. So there was no reason. And whereas all the other weekends around it were completely fine, I was like, this is really weird. I'm being called to do this. And I said to my husband, I was like, look, there's this thing, and I pull this tarot card. You might think I'm crazy, but I think I'm going to go to this. And he was like, okay. I was like, I don't have to write a book. I'll just go along. You know, I don't have to commit to anything. And I went along, and, you know, it was pretty inspiring. And they tell you about how to write a book proposal. So I thought, well, I'll write the book proposal. I'm not committing to writing a book. I'm just doing the book proposal. And that actually was the hardest part of the whole 18 months of me conceiving and writing this book, was actually the book proposal. And so I'd finished that. And then I just thought, I wrote 3 sample chapters, and then you had it in for feedback, and I got my feedback, and it wasn't particularly inspiring feedback, but I took it on the chin, and I was like, do you know what? I actually really believe in this book, and I'm going to give it I'd already had a meeting with that guy's house publisher, and I really clicked with him. I felt like he was sent again, part of that whole unfolding. And yeah, it was like 18 months from starting that, from the writer's workshop until to publishing my book, and every part of it felt so right. And actually, people say to me, well, how quickly did you write the book? I actually took a week to write it. And because I trusted, and I literally channeled, and I was like, just show me what I need to write. And it just came from my heart. And if I just heard myself say that 5 years ago, I'd be like, what a load of rubbish. But it really is true. I just trusted, and I just thought, I've got nothing to lose. And I'm really proud of it, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. I love that, how you just weren't thinking about writing a book at all. No. And you just kept getting these signs, and you listened to them. You know, you allowed yourself to be guided.
And that's life. But we're not always hearing the whispers. But as soon as you start to detox all those old emotions and actually allow, because we're so covered with all this junk. As soon as we clear that out, our intuition goes through the roof, and we hear those calls, and we allow life to just flow. And that's where I am now. And actually today I said, I've done the book. It only came out in March. I've done the book. Like, what's my focus now? And I pulled a card, and it said, you need to get really clear on what it is you want. So I actually asked myself, what do I want? Because often we're manifesting, but if we're not really clear of what we're asking for, then it kind of delivers a bit of uncertainty. And it's an interesting place to be after the book, because you're a bit like, oh,
what's next?
Well, I've done that. And it's a bit like birthing another child, that it comes through you, and you're like, whoa. And it actually feels lovely to have the space now to reset and refocus, and I think it's really important to take that time in anything we do in creative projects.
Absolutely. And to appreciate, what we've done, what we've created, rather than rushing on to the next thing.
And this is it. You can get into a sort of ego chase. Like, you need PR, and you need this, and actually sometimes it's just sitting and trusting that whatever's meant to come will come.
Absolutely.
And
powerful.
Really that.
Powerful. So, Cat, what's the best way for people to find out more about you and what you do and your book?
You can head to my website, catraincock.com, or I'm on Instagram at Cat Raincock, or on Facebook. Look me up under Cat Raincock. I'm there, and just get in touch. If there's a questionnaire on my website of sort of letting me know what you're feeling, what you're going through, and I do one-to-one sessions with my clients, and yeah, if women want to go deeper, like, let's do it, because this is, you know, we're raising the planet's consciousness, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think for every woman who kind of like steps forward to really know herself
Yeah,
and her feelings and to let go of those limiting beliefs, it impacts so many other people. It's really important work.
it
Yeah.
does. And, you know, like, just in my own personal healing, that the inspiration and you know, aspirational traits that I've given them, and then they're doing it now.
Yeah.
You know, they're out there showing other women, like, you know what, you can also live an unbound life. And, you
Yeah.
know, so I think, yeah, we've got to step up and do that.
Yay, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much, Kat, for joining me today. It's been so great to talk with
Oh, my
you.
pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And we'll see you again soon for another episode of Unbound. So,
Lots
bye.
of love.